Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with the Addy stories. Next one is Addy Saves the Day. Chapter 1, Seeds of Hope. Addy Walker stood in the middle of the garden with her eyes closed and her face tilted up to the late afternoon sun. She loved the feeling of warmth on her face. Papa called to Addy. "What are you doing? Resting? You're supposed to be breaking up the ground so we can plant some seeds." Addy smiled at Papa. "I'm trying," she said, "but it's hard, Papa." Of course it's hard," said Mama, who was working with a pitchfork. "Nothing good come easy." "I don't mean that kind of hard," said Addy. "I mean the ground real hard. I can't get my hoe to break through it." "Let me help you," Papa said. Addy, Mama, and Papa were working in a large garden about a mile from their boarding house. There wasn't enough room at the boarding house for a garden, so they rented a small plot and were planting some vegetables and a few flowers. Other people had rented plots in the large garden too. Addy watched as Papa easily broke through the surface of the ground with his shovel. The dirt on top was a lighter color than the dirt deeper down. Papa picked up a big clump of earth that was as dark as coffee. "Look how rich this earth is," Papa said. "We're going to harvest a heap of vegetables." Addy wiggled her bare toes in the earth Papa had turned over. It was cool and soft. "I wish we could plant some fruit too," she said. "I'm sure we'd like some berries." "Well, we'll see," replied Papa. "Remember, we ain't planting this garden for ourselves. We're doing it to raise money." "I know," Addy said. The money they would make from selling their vegetables would help them in their search for her baby sister Esther and her older brother Sam. In the 2 months since the Civil War had ended, Addy, Papa, and Mama had tried to reunite their family. They had taken letters to Aid Society, written to the Freemen's Bureau, and placed an ad in the Christian Recorder newspaper. They even sent a letter to Master Stephen's plantation, where they had been slaves, hoping somebody would read it to Auntie Lula and Uncle Solomon. But they had not received any answers or news about Esther or Sam. Now Papa was determined to go back to the plantation as soon as he could to get Esther and find out where Sam might be. Papa would need money for his trip. Addy followed behind Papa, using her hoe to chop up big chunks of earth he turned over. And every time she struck one of the chunks, her hands stung from the wooden handle rubbing against her skin. Sometimes she hit rocks hidden under the dirt, and she felt the hoe bounce in her hand. She dug out the rocks and loaded them on the wheelbarrow to get them out of the way. Clearing out a thick patch of weeds in the middle of the plot was the toughest work of all. The weeds came up to as high as Addy's knees. Some of them had burrs that snagged on her dress and dug into her skin. The weeds were stubborn, and Addy had to use all her strength to yank them out of the ground. Soon, her back ached from bending over and sweat ran down her face. "Let's stop and rest a bit," Mama said. She paused a moment to wipe sweat from her brow. "We can sit and have our picnic supper." Mama had picked up their dinner from the boarding house and brought it to the garden. Addy was happy to be thinking about supper and resting. Resting wasn't allowed back on the plantation. Addy shuddered, remembering her life when she was a slave. When she worked in the tobacco fields, the overseer watched the other slaves with a whip in his hand. They couldn't stop when they were tired or have a drink of water unless the overseer said they could. But it was different now. Mama spread an old blanket on the ground. As they ate and drank, Addy asked, "If you had to ask God a question, what would you ask?" "That's easy for me," answered Mama. "I would ask what we would do to get our family together again. I'd ask how we get Esther, Sam, Auntie Lula, and Uncle Solomon here safe in Philadelphia with us." Addy turned to Papa. "What about you, Papa?" "I don't know, but I might ask how I got a daughter with so many questions," Papa said. He let out a loud chuckle. Mama and Addy laughed too. Then Addy said seriously, I'd ask why there had to be slavery." "There didn't have to be slavery," Mama said. "People chose to have it. Folks do plenty of things they know is wrong." "If it wasn't for slavery, our whole family would be together," Addy said fiercely. "That's why I hate Master Stevens." You know I don't like you talking that way, Mama scolded gently. But I do hate him, Addie insisted. Everything is his fault. He sold Papa and Sam away from us. Then you and I had to run away from him and leave Esther behind with Auntie Lula and Uncle Solomon. Papa spoke to Addie with understanding. What you feel right now is a lot of bitterness, he said. I know, because I feel that same way sometimes. It's hard not to. He sighed. Then he went on to say, but you gotta know, Addie, anger and bitterness can be like weeds. If you let them grow, pretty soon they take over and there ain't room for nothing else. Mama poured more water into Addie's drinking gourd. I feel angry too sometimes, she says. But I feel other things even stronger. I want to hold Esther in my arms and give Sam a big hug. I want to spend evenings talking to Auntie Lula and Uncle Solomon. I want... Mama stopped talking and stared off into the distance. Addie moved closer to Mama. She knew how sad Mama was and how much she missed the rest of the family. Touching the cowrie shell on her necklace, Addie remembered what Mama had told her. The shell was a reminder to hold on to the love of her family, even when she was far away from them. I want us all to be back together too, Addie said softly. Papa stood up and held out his hand to help Mama stand up too. Let's clear out the rest of these weeds, he said. Then we can start planting. Addie worked steadily alongside Mama and Papa for another hour, stopping only to rub dirt on her hands and to keep the handle of the hoe from slipping so much. When they finished weeding, Papa struck long pieces of string from one end of the plot to the other to lay straight out rows. Then he walked along one of the strings and used a hoe to make a furrow in the dirt. When they started planting, Addie knelt between Mom and Papa. She watched their hands carefully. Gently, they grabbed seeds in the furrow, and then even more gently, they smoothed over the dirt over the seeds. Addie tried to be as careful as Mama and Papa. The seeds were precious, not just because they cost money, because the plants that grew from these seeds would help their family be reunited. Addie knew she was planting seeds of hope. It took a long time to plant the seeds, and Addie was tired when she finally walked to the stream to wash her hands sore in the water. But it was a good tiredness that comes from doing an important job. Papa, Addie said, tomorrow's Saturday. I don't have school. Can I come work in the garden while you and Mama are at work? Mama and I got the day off tomorrow, said Papa, washing dirt from his hands. None of us go to work tomorrow in the garden or anything else. Don't you remember, Addie? Tomorrow is the day of the big parade, the grand review. But that soldier parade only going to have white soldiers marching in it, said Addie. Why we got to go see them march? Because they're fighting to help bring slavery to an end. That's why, Mama said. We should honor them for being brave. Well, I hope when colored soldiers come home, they have a parade for them, said Addie. They was brave too. If Sam ever got to be a soldier, I'm sure he was real brave. I got no doubt about that, Papa said. I ain't never known your brother to be scared of a thing. Sam was something special. He brave and smart and funny, said Addie. Remember how he was always riddling me? He would say, what's smaller than a dog but can put a bear on the run? Papa said, I got a riddle for you now, he said as he gathered the garden tools. What's big and red and sinking fast? We better get back to the boarding house. Can't I stay a little longer? Asked Addie. I want to water the seeds I planted. All right, said Papa, but come straight home as soon as you finish. I will, promised Addie. She filled up her watering can at the stream as Mama and Papa left. Then she walked slowly up and down the room, giving the newly planted seeds a generous drink of water. Addie felt pleased as she watered the garden. Her hands were still burning a little, but she didn't mind. The seeds they had planted lay safe under the blanket of rich soil, and soon with help they would grow. Well, 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 if it isn't little plantation girl, said a sharp voice behind Addie. Addie rolled around to see Harriet standing at the edge of the pot smirking. Harriet was a girl from school whom she did not like. You look right at home in that dirt patch, Harriet went on. It ain't a dirt patch, Addie said. It's a garden, a vegetable garden. Vegetables? Asked Harriet. What's the matter? Don't your parents make enough money to buy food for you to eat? "We're gonna sell the vegetables," said Addie proudly. "My papa gonna use the money to go back to the plantation to get my sister and look for my brother." "Oh, yes," said Harriet. "You told me about your lost brother, the one who you think might have been a soldier." She smiled a superior smile. "My uncle served with distinction in the 3rd Infantry. He'll be home any day now. My mother says she expects he is a hero and will have medals to prove it. We're going to have a big party for him." "My brother Sam coming home too someday," said Addie stubbornly. "I'm sure of it." Harriet shrugged to show that she did not care. "Well, I shouldn't keep you from your dirt patch. I mean your garden," she said, and she flounced away. Addie watched her go, feeling hurt and angry and jealous. If only she knew as much about Sam as Harriet knew about her uncle. Addie gathered her hoe and her watering can and headed home. The sun had fallen behind the buildings and the evening air was cold. When Addie got back to the boarding house, she washed her hands carefully. Mom had set out a sheet of paper, a pen, and an inkwell on the table for Addie to write another letter about Esther and Sam. Addie knew the supplies cost precious money. She didn't want to make any mistakes when she wrote because that would be wasteful. Mom and Papa sat next to Addie at the table and reminded her what she should say. "You got to remember to say where we last saw everybody," Mama said. "That's right," said Papa, "and make sure you can tell how they can find us here in Philadelphia. And don't forget to say we love them all," Mama reminded Addie. Addie smiled. "I won't leave that part out," she said as she dipped her pen in the ink and carefully began writing. Mom and Papa watched she wrote, their faces full of concern. Scritch scratched. Addie moved the pen across the paper. She knew the words she wrote were nothing more than shapes to Papa, who could not read or write. When she finished, she read her letter to her parents. "That's real nice, Addie," Mama said. Papa nodded. "You write real good." He said, "We'll take the letter to the Quaker Aid Society first thing in the morning before the parade." Here's what the letter says. June 9th, 1865. "Dear friends, can you help us find our family? Please, Solomon and Lula Morgan. They caring for our dear baby Esther Walker. We last seen them last summer on the plantation belonging to Master Stevens. The plantation is some 20 miles north of Raleigh. We need information about Samuel Walker also. He about 17 years old. He was sold from the Stevens plantation last summer. We don't know where he was sold to. If you can help us write to Ben Walker on South Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We want to find them very much because we love them all. Ben Walker." Addie held the letter in her hands for a moment. She thought about Harriet's knowing where her uncle was. Harriet could send her uncle a letter anytime she wanted to. This letter got to be somebody who knows about Esther and Sam. Addie thought, it's just got to. Then she folded her letter carefully. She hoped the letter, like the seed she planted in the garden, would help her family be together again. That's the end of that chapter. See you.